podcast listeners, if you hear my voice right now, I need you to do something for me. I want you to take out your phone or on your computer, go to Apple Podcasts, search for Ask Your Oldhead Podcast. You'll see my logo, my little picture, my little image there. Find the show. Please rate and write a review. It's a small thing, but it helps others find this work and find what I'm doing here. And it really, really matters, as small as that may seem. So if you could please do that before we get into the show, I would much appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Let's get into it. Peace. You are listening to Good Brothers. This week, Verzuz delivers another opportunity for us to deep dive into not just the content of the event, but the realities of looking at Black men situated across different places and spaces and spectrums. And so we came to some thoughts and some understandings, and we thought it was relevant and timely, and take the best part for yourself. Peace. I'm Majestic.
My brother, how are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm great, even maybe. We're back again in another week in life, and I know we had some other things on the table, but I think the occurrences of the most recent Verzuz requires, or I think at least asks for a conversation. And I'm gonna tip my hat because now Bree's gonna hear this and he's gonna be like, God, if you was gonna talk about the Verzuz, you should have told me. Now, Bree, we could talk about it again next week. I'll be free all day Thursday.
My man.
I'm not doing anything. So let me know what time it is. You know what I mean? Hop on, we can get it done.
That's right. I appreciate you.
And peace to the God while we at it. You know what I mean? God. So the the salient piece, so Jeezy and Gucci Mane, they had the Verzuz.
Yes, sir.
And they both are from Atlanta, is my understanding. Or
if you listen to Gucci say, I don't know where you from.
Right. You from wherever.
He said from down the street. He said from down the street. Damn.
Definitely, I guess we say they associated with the Atlanta music scene.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Of the early of the arts. You know what I'm saying? We call them anchor foundational artists of that second bubble, second wave after like Outkast and them, like established Outkast, the Outkast, and then the Jermaine Dupri, Dallas Austin world.
I mean, arguably founders, or if not founders, depending on your take on that term, definitely popularizers and evangelists of trap music. Because you could argue some of the stuff that Goody Mob was saying and Backbone, and in its current iteration, you would have called it trap music, right? Some of the stuff on AT Aliens would have been called trap music, right? Mm-hmm. Just with different music.
Right.
However, I would say Jeezy and Gucci Mane both arrived at a time where Atlanta became known for that kind of sound, also benefiting, I think, as we'll talk a little deeper about, from the benefit of BMF, of the Black Mafia family, and that whole popularity of Atlanta and people coming to Atlanta, and then kind of hearing this music that was being projected to the rest of the world, but definitely rest of any ghetto USA, shall we say.
Mm-hmm. And so, I think the landing point that, I don't want to circumscribe it. Let's say this: what is the kind of the first landing point that you saw, that you felt? I mean, what's something that came up in their exchange of musical energy? That pulled you and said, we need to talk about that?
Well, Yeah, I mean, and I think I want to actually touch on the music first because obviously everybody wants to talk about the other components of it and doing it, air quotes, for the culture, which I never actually support. Because I don't know what culture you're doing it for. But I think, talking about the music. So one thing that's interesting to me is that it really was something. Gucci and Jeezy are both 40-year-old men, right? Mm-hmm. And even the numbers and stuff like that skewed older, right? Because I mean, people know Gucci because I think he's a little more relevant in this day and time than Jeezy for a variety of reasons. But like people, it's not like a young man's game to know Gucci and Jeezy, right? Mm-hmm. They got a whole new set of people that they listen to. But if you're 40 and down, right, this was your inspiration 15 years ago when you were either trapping or acting like you were trapping, or in college dancing around acting like you were trapping, or trying to trap, whatever variation that you had at that time. And then obviously the lives of both the musical lives of Jeezy and Gucci went in way different directions. So I just thought, one, it was just interesting that there were a lot of like 35 to 45-year-old black folks wanting some resolution out of this, which I thought was interesting. Two, it was them listening to music of when they saw themselves, I would assert, as in their prime, right? And so I think it was genius. And I want to say, I think the Verzuz model across the board is genius, and them creating a media platform that, if I read this correctly today, was probably the most watched music show other than the Grammys in America this year.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, they have outdone the American Music Awards. I mean, the exposures, this has become something way bigger than itself. So the Swizz Beats and Timberland, and also it's important, I think folks forget about the guy Larry Jackson. And Larry Jackson is he's a corporate exec at Apple. Mm-hmm. That has been really important on helping this occur. And for, because you think about it, for folks that they can't tour, right? Right. They can only rely on streams, right? This idea of being able to do merch, being able to get a check cut from companies. I mean, all these things matter, right? And to be able to keep something that's relevant to the world in this day and time right now, I think is important. But yeah, so musically, so I'll start here with musically, because I know, you've unfortunately kept your brain separate from a lot of things over the last 15 to 20 years, where me, not so much. I mean, I think musically, Jeezy had the better presentation, right? He had more anthemic songs. Though I will say, though, if you've ever been to any somewhat small town in America, and by that I mean under 400,000 people, you will soon learn that Gucci is the man. Also, if you've been to any after hours in any said small town after a certain time, you will then recognize that Gucci controls that. Gucci was controlling the after hours at a certain time, right? Mm-hmm. But I think musically, Gucci had more relevant songs, newer songs, as he talked about, right? Yeah. Won't you play some new shit? Stop playing your old shit. Hey. I got new hits. You keep playing that. You keep playing that shit from 20 years ago, buddy. So what was your take on it?
Just a second though, so I'm scrolling through because I'm like, well, let me, because I had done this, but I didn't realize. I mean, I know Gucci came home. He went and sat down for a few years, right? Yeah. He came home like 2014, 2015.
Yeah, WAP came home like 2015. Yeah.
It's so many records.
Oh man, wow, yeah.
I mean, you know, like I said, I try to play because like I've heard some songs, but you know, certain things in life where I go, look, I need someone who's more learned. Point me to the ones I should take the time to check out. It's like five. It's mad.
Yeah, no. WAP is like, man, I'm trying to like. He's like the Miles Davis. Like, and I know some people will laugh here, but he just produces so many songs
every month. Like, as you go to 2015, I'm still scrolling. It's at least 10, 12 records.
Yeah.
It's like 2015, you know, 15 to 20 tracks a joint. And, you know, which maybe even points to like him being like, look, man, I make a new song, keep moving. Like, I just made a new song last night.
Hey, you came in the studio. Hold on. I was in the studio. I was with y'all. Listen, you like that beat? Come on, let's drop the song. All right, bet. We drop the song. I mix it. It goes on the album.
Right, it's out. Song.
And it is also important to remember in that I think, you know, again, a part of Gucci Mane's importance to the Southern culture that can get lost in this is that when you think about Migos, when you think about people like Young Scooter and so many other Southern artists, Gucci had a role in exposing them to the broader world. Mm-hmm. So he's like one of them guys where if you're good, you get on the song, we do the song. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Right.
Now, and I wonder if some of these is also like projects that were done before 2015, and like as soon as he got home, he just like, look, get them all up there. You know
yeah, but I mean, I will say like East Atlanta Santa. Yeah. You know, first day out is a particular one of like, you know, first day out is strong. But no, I mean he's relentless. You know what I mean? If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. Right? And which I think is also a really interesting part of like the hip hop / trap / blues culture. Mm-hmm. Right? Because I look at Gucci as almost like a blues performer. Yeah. Like, just like blues artists had popular songs with other people.
Yeah.
But they never stopped being blues artists. Right? Like, they would still keep doing songs about whiskey and women, but they might go and do a song on TV, but then they would come back and do the exact same song over and over again. That's Gucci. Right? And so it's an interesting part of like, even broke down how people were like, here's who I think is going to win. And people being like, I think Jeezy's going to win because Jeezy is the man and he's handsome. And you know what I mean? And then some people being like, man, Gucci's the shit. I used to trap the Gucci. I used to sell pills, right? Like this, that, and the third. And obviously people used to trap the Jeezy as well. I remember disabusing a number of young people from liking Jeezy when he first came out, only to grow to like him later myself. I never developed quite the same feeling for Gucci. But so I think music wise, it was an interesting space that everyone was in regard to wanting to see it. And then I guess then we can kind of go to the other part, which, you know, I think you have some insight on in regard to, you know, kind of what everyone was waiting for.
Yeah. Well, I want to get back because the other thing that I can speak to or want to add, like from the music perspective, is, you know, even if you're not familiar with someone's material, you know, someone who is when someone is esteemed, you get the message. You know what I'm saying? Because people go, oh yeah, like you know what I mean? And then especially even on the age gap, you know what I mean, tip, you know what I'm saying? Because, you know, those maybe 5 years my younger have a different sense of time as it pertains to some of these songs. And then definitely anybody 10 years my younger, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, or if you was 16, you know what I'm saying, in 2004, you know what I'm saying, you feel differently about these artists, you know what I'm saying, or later, you know what I'm saying, where, or, you know, not just 2004, but anywhere there, because you would hit your 20s, you know, so these would be artists that would be part of it. And so I knew when I saw that was the one on deck. And as always with the verses, I be wanting to know what's happening, but if I'm not on the social medias and the other things, I'm like, oh, that's happening tomorrow. I'm saying, like, old man time. I'm like, oh man, look at that. I gotta check that out, man. We'll see what happens. I'll at least watch the waiver wire for the action. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I thought, I knew it was actually kind of a dope get, as it were. You know what I'm saying? To have those two artists, performing together, that there would be something, impactful and important about that. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess we can go to that now. Within the scrum, and I had to go and do some research and then ask the people. There was the moment of basically the larger spectrum of life as it pertains to these two individuals that resulted in some there was violence, and that somebody basically related or connected to Jeezy's world had, there were the alleged, under my understanding, was that someone tried to kill Gucci.
Right.
And what happened with that person didn't make it out, and Gucci did. And
can we just stop and talk about how it is reported that Gucci was so high that after he killed homie, he tried to go bury him. Can we just talk about how high you gotta be to kill him up and then take it upon yourself to actually go bury him? Yeah,
that's wild.
You gotta be high as all get out.
Yeah, you gotta be you stimulated, as they say.
Cool. And I think that's also part of the just a brief part of that. I think that's also part of the Gucci phenomenon, if you will, that coming from what he came from, coming home from jail, people often say he got cloned. Because who he went in and who he came out as two different people. But he came home, literally got a contract with Gucci, put an album out every 45 seconds. Mm-hmm. And reestablish his career, right? And so I think there's a part of the hood that says, like, Gucci is one of us that made it. Maybe a little less so with Jeezy, depending on your perspective. I think there's certain people in the neighborhood that would say the same thing. But so, but yes, I just wanted to share. I think that's also a huge part of it. But so I think there's also some context for this, and this is important, I think, for the water cooler gangsters that pop up all the time, of like how we think they should have handled this situation, right? Mm-hmm. How we perceive that, right? Versus two people who had beef in a time where you're aligned, Jeezy in particular is aligned with the crew, who is the most powerful Black organization in the entire country at that point, right? Mm-hmm. Bar none, any organization. I don't care what kind of organization you said it was. It was not more powerful than BMF. Mm-hmm. BMF literally had tentacles in almost every city in America. And so, which is, I suggest if anyone gets a chance to read the book BMF about Big Meech, or check out any of his interviews, just if you can share some. I think he's a fascinating leader. People will take what they will from that, but Big Meech was a fascinating leader that was able to, keep people together from all across the country of different affiliations and organizations for a long time. And it's important to note in this situation that, unlike a lot what people will talk about in the Black community with, extra legal organizations, the vast majority of people who actually were involved with the extra legal activities with him did not say anything. They only got stuff about him from his brother being on the phones. Like, literally. So, like, he went down. There was like 30 people who went down with BMF, and nobody told on him at all. But he had a RICO act because his brother spoke about him on the phones. So anyway, but yeah, so you get someone like that who's aligned, and at that point, Jeezy was aligned with this powerful organization, and he puts a bounty on this man's head. And there's some people that go to collect the bounty. And the result is the result. And then we get 15 years later of both of these men being at this place. So then there's this larger conversation of what does it mean for us as a Black community to deal with resolution and healing and perspective. Now, I know, Just, you deal with a lot of young people and not some not so young people who find themselves in situations with others who they have, created crimes against each other. When you're in that situation, how do you kind of work with a person that has this deep, abiding passion against somebody, but try to get them to see the bigger picture?
I mean, for young men that are still in the moment, the conversation is, what's more important to you right now, and what's the risk, and the most, and then also, and this I will say, speaking to, not to concepts that I am responsible for coming up with anyway, but concepts that the largest of some of the men I work with and have worked with in other capacities in the community will approach it and say, if you go do whatever you about to do or feel like you need to do in regards to this, here's all the things that come with it. If you can, just stay out the way for a moment. You know what I mean? Just fall back. You know what I mean? Protect yourself. You know what I'm saying? If you feel you're threatened or, someone actually does try to hurt you, you got to do what you feel you need to do to survive. But if you can in this moment, fall back on it, right? The down the line conversation that I've been able to bear witness to, quite frankly, similar to these two men, y'all was 20 something and y'all was in the scrum, and now you're not 20 something no more. And not only have you lived enough life to go like, I got other things in my life than being upset with you or having an issue with you. And me and you definitely had issues, but I can. It's almost like not saying I've forgiven you, like, because sometimes people go, because they can forgive and they can. And it's like, well, forgive is a very powerful thing. It's a very powerful human thing to forgive someone for harm, right? Mm-hmm. But there's also a thing of where you can agree, like, you know what, I'm not going to go. There's places I'm not going to go no more, right? And I think, to me, that is a more powerful place, and also a more honest to how people feel, because it would be very difficult to, if I had to right now, like even now, see someone who I had a mortal issue with, where we wanted to kill each other 20 years ago, and I know that, and they know that, and then now just be like, chummy, buddy, it's all good. Like, whatever happened with that, or you hurt people that I cared about. People that I cared about ain't here with me no more because of whatever we had going on 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago. I might be able to develop the sense of the larger image to go, I want to be here for my kids, so I'm gonna leave that alone. Right. I want to be here. I don't want to spend no more time in nobody's prison, so I'm gonna leave that alone. You know what I'm saying? Like, it becomes more of a what you're weighing, and then also, depending on, and I think we'll get to, sort of some of the commentary after the fact, and during, but that, that Jeezy spoke to, of this can't be the way we solve everything. Right. And I'm okay with, leaving it as things are, if that means that nobody else got to go through what I'm going through. Nobody else has to experience sort of the pain and the loss. I think, though, that the challenge sometimes when it gets to talking about the in-community violence that happens, and how people deal with it is being honest that you have people who aren't necessarily forgiving anyone for anything that they've done, but they are agreeing to letting things be as they are and live for other things, right? Like go to other places and deal with the other aspects of life. They are not feeling as if they need to, resolve, this old issue. But it also is not I absolve them of all guilt and wrongdoing and whatever they had visited upon me. And I can imagine in the context of very specifically when it's not like the person next to the person, but it's me and you had somebody come to get me. Right. Where at some point you want to, and I think there's a healthy place of, if you want them two men to find peace, that you might need to leave space for one of them to say to the other one, like, I need to make sure you understand what I am, maybe if it wasn't in so many terms, but what I am letting go of by not, turning this into something else at this moment. By just saying, hey man, this happened, and I know he was talking, pretty rough about the brother's man, the man that lost his life and whatnot. But if he can get that out of his system, and this is the end of it, then that's how actually the better for all of us is experiencing the discomfort of reliving sort of that tension, than actually seeing this escalate back into something where these two 40-year-old men try to kill each other. You know what I mean? Like in the name of what? You know what I mean? It gets into this. I think we often talk about in the work when you're doing intervention work, and even those that know, like in the acute, I think it's the first 120 days or so after someone has been shot at, basically, or shot, or they were the victim in whatever way. It's in that window that if you can get that person to not retaliate, more than likely there won't be another incident related. Like, it'll pass. But if you're not able to hopefully get past that time, it's likely to escalate. It's a challenging moment. I mean, we got a lot of violence in our city this summer. Like, I've talked about it on here. We've had a really rough time. I just, saw a little bit of some of the violence that's been going on in Brooklyn this last couple months. Like, there's some different places in the country, man, where it's rough. It's a hard, and I think that the idea and something, and I'm gonna give him props to say it. My man Royal always says is, if we can't teach some of these young dudes that just because you don't fuck with somebody doesn't mean you got to kill them. You can just be like, yo, I don't fuck with you.
Just leave you alone. That's right.
Like, I'm over here. I'm not, like, I'm gonna leave y'all stay over there. We gonna stay over here. You know what I'm saying? But that it always has to go to gunplay and the whole whatever is, like, at some point somebody you got to say, like, yo man, you can't, this ain't good for anybody. That this is the way we settle every slight and matter and issue of disrespect, is that is gunplay, and then that we all co-sign it and say, yeah, that's just that's what had to happen. It's like, well, did it have to, like, it's very tough. You know what I mean? And I try to be honor the idea that sometimes the confluence of decisions and circumstances that someone finds himself in may have them have to make a choice that is not a good choice in the broad spectrum of life, but is the choice they felt they had to make to survive a moment. But then the hope is that it's only that survival moment, and hopefully no one, like, everyone left with their life and only the trauma of having to save themselves, but not also the trauma of physical harm that was visited upon them, you know what I'm saying, or someone else, that may be irreparable, you know what I'm saying, and no way to undo.
So I want to just add on 2 points there that I think is important that you touched on. One is, and I'll say this is for me personally, when I listened or watched it, at first it was like, I think I was kind of where a good number of people were, of like, damn, dog, you bringing it back up. Like, we smoking on Pookie Lope, we doing this, we doing that. And you know how people feel like Jeezy took the bigger, it was the bigger person. And then I took a moment to sit back and think about the trauma, right? Like, they may not have never really come to a situation of resolution and be like, yo, you tried to kill me.
Right.
Right. And so for us watching to be like, oh, man, come on, get over that. It was 15 years ago. What statute of limitation is it on that's okay? Right.
Yeah.
And I think we, as everyone talks about in our community, sometimes getting on your grown man, we often use that and brush over the things and the work that people need to do to be okay. Right? So for black men, we'll often be like, yo, get on your grown man. AKA, don't worry about that. Let that go. Okay, well, some things you can let go, right? If the guy over there tried to kill me, never apologized, I don't know if I'm gonna let this go, right? Like I don't know if I'm gonna let this go. And I think this idea, it's definitely said and talked about from people that have never had those experiences to really engage that. So I think that was like one part of it that I really had to think about, like his own trauma and community trauma, right? Because here's the other thing about that, and this kind of will take me to my second point. You got community trauma on some like, and you know how this happens. Oh man, that sucker tried to woo woo woo. You know what I'm saying? Try to do our hood. You know how we do it, right? Mm-hmm. He ain't even from over here. Going back to our point, like he ain't even from over here. You gotta do this. Not even from over here. Trying to do this to us. This is zone 6. Woo, 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 right? So you got community trauma constantly reinforcing the idea of what you can't do to me. Mm-hmm. You spend time with a whole bunch of gangsters every day that just maybe don't have cases, right? Because you have spent. But besides that, you just spend time with a whole bunch of gangsters every day who reinforce those ideas to you. And you trust those people. That is your network, right? And so for Gucci, now Jeezy say, hey, man, I want to hang out with Tony Robbins, right? Cool. He's hanging out with Tony Robbins, making good podcasts. I'm with that. But these men are in two different places, which goes to the other component of the conversation in our communities around survival and success and significance, right? And so the survival conversation and how many of our young men and not so young men and not so young women are still locked in survival mode, right? Like, I don't know if you remember when T.I. made the kind of mistimed comment around people not coming to Atlanta and killing each other. Right after King Von died. Yeah. He, and it was mistimed. It was just bad. There's no other way to say it. It was just bad. But, Chicago folks and some other folks jumped on T.I.'s neck like, yo, whoop-de-whoop, because they are in survival mode, right? So to them, saying anything in the immediate time is almost like wiping away the death of someone they care about. And for this particular group of people, they constantly function in that space, right? And they constantly give each other that energy. And then there's a part of what I'm going to call, when I say hip hop culture, I mean just really street culture that has come into rap music, just call it that. That then advocates that same cycle. So you get the juxtaposition of Jeezy and Gucci in this sense because of the juxtaposition of what often goes on in our communities. Of the ability to move through something, move past it, get over it. Or people who, that for very real reasons of how they live, they don't feel as though they can afford to let slights go.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the slight is evidence, it's like the precursor to that there's a weakening of your defense.
Exactly.
So if I let you slight me, who else gonna take a slight? Take a shot to see if they can slight me, and I can't afford to let somebody who may actually hurt me take So I'm swinging at everything.
Right. So even if it's not deserving of the swing, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's important for folks who are listening to understand that there are people, because of the conditions that they find themselves in, that is the mode that they have to function in. That many of us can sit and be like, oh, you know what? Hey, man, you said something a little sideways to me. And you know what? I'll let you go with that. You know what I mean? But there's worlds that people's like, no, I'm not letting that slide. Yeah. Listen, there's certain times in government you be like, let the guys say. And sometimes like, nope, can't say that. You got to respond. Nope. You don't get to say that and then no response, because it's the same idea. If I allow you to say that and it's not true, look what happens. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I just think that is still a part of being for the culture, as we talk about, right? Air quotes, that the culture got to start figuring out what are the appropriate places that different people need to be in, and truly still understanding that there is a segment of the group of people who do rap music who still find themselves in extremely dangerous landscapes, like you said. Mm-hmm. They're coming from environments all across the country where the wrong decision, the wrong gang sign thrown down can literally mean death. Right? The wrong line on a song can literally mean someone gets hurt. Right? And so if that is the case of really looking at this thing that we're talking about from a broader model, we have to take that and, to your point, advance it, because letting Gucci say what he wanted to say, then Jeezy one up him by putting on the song at a really good time, which I thought was really good. Mm-hmm. Get your mind right, but that was really well done. And then them agree to do the song, and then everything is okay, right? Like that is not a sufficient way to handle all.
Right. If anything, it should be for them and for their situation. We should look at it and go, "Yo, that is dope." That they was able to deal with this energy that was very personal, to them, and this be, at least apparently, be the sum total of it. That it was a tough, awkward, what do you say, self-effacing moment. You know what I'm saying? On the whole internet, the whole planet Earth could have watched, and then. You went through that arc of like, what did he just say about me? Like basically he just called me. You know what I'm saying? Like Piccolo play as a motherfucker. Like, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, Piccolo, you know what I'm saying? Like, shout out to Robert Harris. You know what I mean? Like, and then it's like, wait, you can't just be talking to me like this. Well, you know what? Nah, hold up, man. Like, let me respond in this other way. And then to get to wherever, get to the other side of it where they both could go, all right, we can't never say it wasn't said, out loud in front of the world. Right. And now, all right, we gonna move on. You know what I'm saying? And I think that the black men having conflict in public most often in our world plays out, with serious casualties. You know what I'm saying? Whether they be, from the neighborhood violence, interpersonal community violence level to, somebody's career ending up in the trash, or,
right.
You know what I mean? Some, state or someone losing a influential position. So, yeah, I mean, like someone ending up off of a off of an NFL team, or like, yeah, I mean, something where it's like, wait, why y'all? What happened with them? You know what I mean? And then it's like, well, actually, you know, what happened was, and the brother, and you know, organization splitting. You know what I'm saying? Because they had a beef. Like, you know, I think it's a serious matter for us to not look at it lightly, almost like oh, Gucci Mane and Jeezy are just these, you know, entertainment figures. Like, they're real people. They're like real, fully developed human beings that have families, that have networks of care and friends and family and communities that identify with them, that see them as like an avatar, so to speak, or a representative of, like, that's my work. Like, yeah, Gucci is somebody that's like where I'm from. So you hurt Gucci, you hurted me.
Right.
Right. And I think that we can get into, and I think we talked about this with the brother Kanye, where for people outside our community, they can enjoy the privilege of looking at it as spectacle. Right. And just go, oh, it's like, oh, he's just such an interesting individual. Look at that guy. He's so strange. He's so different. Look at the way he's acting. And go, oh, he's tripping. Like, ha ha ha. You know what I mean? Where we know, like, nah, man, like, that man means something to people.
That's right.
You know what I mean? And it's important for me to respect, even if, you know, whatever my particular relationship or orientation to that man, and go, nah, let me hold space for whoever cares about that person in a way that I don't, or understands them and connects to them in a way that I don't have a connection. I think would be a better way to phrase that than care. You know what I'm saying? And I think that is like when we, at least I was thinking about this week, when we talk about sort of like, you know, echoing into and looking at the world in a different lens and getting away from these different certain concepts of the current American, you know, or the average American establishment, you know, I think one of those things that pertains to Black people and that we have to be vigilant about is thinking about Black people in the public space as not just commodities. You know what I'm saying? Like, but they are, I try to do is go, no, wait, that's and just for the record, I apply this to other humans too. I just know Black people stuff differently. You know what I'm saying? In a way that I have much, you know what I'm saying? If I know your community and your world, then I go, oh, nah, man, that's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I try to connect and respect. Like, nah, that's a human up there. Like, that's a person with a full-fledged construction of the world. And whether or not I agree with certain parts of that construction, there's a whole set of circumstances that got them to where they're at and where I've become aware of them. And now if they've made this slight or this misstep or they've had this incident, you know what I'm saying? If it pop up on the TMZ, to the Griot, to the Gossip, to the World Star, to the, I don't know what the one, I know there's one overseas, like something, you know, whatever the gossip joint overseas, where it's like, oh, it's just celebrity news. It's like, it's not just celebrity news. It's about actual, the very real issues and the dynamics of the city of Atlanta and the region of Atlanta.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? From 2003 to 2014.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, this is not just about them as celebrities or like, oh, they're just, you know, there's just some rappers that were like coached up. Like, nah, like they're from a thing. Like, they're from a cultural wave. Yeah. So let's respect that and understand that wave is a part of what gave them the energy to break through, you know what I'm saying, to other parts of the world. They needed that culture. They didn't have that cultural wave to break through, you know what I mean, and develop enough space and energy and attention. The rest of us wouldn't be aware of them. So when they if they got a history and an issue, that means that wave got a history and an issue. That wave got stories. That wave got perspectives on who should or shouldn't do this, or what shouldn't or shouldn't happen, or who was wrong or who was right. You know what I'm saying? And strong feelings. I mean, you know, how many of us from our generation would prefer to see Pac and Biggie have a versus where Pac can say, I think you tried to get me shot and da on the stage, as opposed to neither one of them is here for us to do nothing. Neither one of them is here for us to have any moment to engage with what actually happened or for them to see resolution. I think it's really, you know, for whatever it is, I think it's dope. I think it's a great thing, actually, that if this is all that ever comes, you know, if that's the end of the arc of that pain and trauma between them, man, everybody get a hug, man. And not even on no like, oh, I mean, the grown man thing is great. But like on some like, yo, that's what sometimes that's what we need in the community. We need like that kind of issue to get to an arc where it's like, all right, look, man, it's a wrap. Like it's done. Like, you know what I mean? It don't need to be spoke on no more. You know what I'm saying? And then, you know, to the degree where other people may feel like they're picking up the banner of your disrespect by having an issue with somebody, you know what I'm saying, on the opposite side.
And that's what I was saying about the other trauma. That's what I was saying about the community trauma, right? Because it's people around him that's like, you know what, I got your back. Fuck him.
Right.
Like, you know, listen, and all black men deal with it. I'm going to tell you, if somebody say, fuck Justice, fuck you. I'm going to say it on the record. If somebody say, fuck Justice, fuck them. Like, you know what I mean? But again, and I have to process that, right? Now, I have to come back and say, Justice, what happened? I might go outside, but no, I ain't with that. We ain't dealing with that. Oh, no, hell no. Fuck you. But then again, it's like my pop once told me. He said, listen, man, I'm always gonna have your back outside, but you got to tell me the truth as soon as we get in the house, right? Like I'm gonna support you, but then you got to tell me what actually occurred, right? So. As black men, our understanding of showing up for each other is often a level of intensity and a level of loyalty, right? That done in an imbalanced way goes off really fast.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the stakes are so high.
The stakes are so high. So we're sitting here having a conversation, and I say that, right? What if somebody sitting somewhere for a person that kept them out of jail, allowed them to feed their family, or, you know, whatever, they came up in the playground together? Like, you think that person is going to allow you to disrespect this person and get away with it and this, that, and the third, right? Like, the rules of engagement just don't allow for that. And so I just think that, you know, to your point, you know, you often saw after the event, people were like, who won? Atlanta won, right? And I think that's a powerful part of it, because that is probably who won. Like, it doesn't mean Gucci's has any more resolution. Yeah. It doesn't mean that Jeezy has any more resolution, because at least 10 minutes before they ended, Gucci man was still clearly disrespecting him. Yeah. Right? Like, because I think it was important. One of the parts that he said that I actually watched like over and over again. So he said, you know, it's spooky low. And also in that song Truth, if you listen, he said a whole bunch of disrespectful stuff, not just one thing. Mm-hmm. But he talked about his man, but then he said, and if you put more people, I'll send them right back to you the same way. Free kill. So that was the most kind of like jarring thing to me. That homie wasn't like, I sent your man to you. Homie was like, and if you got any more people, right, I'll send them in a box right back to you too. Free kill. Like, whoa.
Yeah.
Right? So homie may or may not be okay. You know what I'm saying? He may have done enough to get through to survive the encounter, as they say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I look at it and I'm, like I said, I guess put on my practitioner hat, so to speak, to say, you know, at some point he probably needed to say that.
Yeah.
Like for him to be able to get to some place where it's like he let it go, whatever. Like, because all of that is wrapped up in his, you know, that's part of, like, I mean, that's where we just, like, it's right close to the vest as part of the identity. You know what I'm saying? And like, yo, you don't. Yeah, like, yeah, I mean, like, especially on them terms, like, yo, you said somebody came try to take me out of here. Like, I'm trying to let it go. You know what I mean? And I think based on just everything else that he's done since he's come home. Right. Which shows that like he's a man that's looking at his life like, yo, I don't want to spend my life in none of them buildings. I want to be out here. But that if anything could take you back to who you were before that experience, would be looking across the stage at the man who you know was at least played a role in someone coming to kill you, if not was the one that sent them.
Yeah.
So like you know, it's something that I've said in you know, in some spaces, you know, even and I try to be really candid about this when we talk about like resolutions and people coming, you know, coming back to the community and then like, you know, sometimes brothers that go, they did whatever they did, the experience they had, then they get to a spot where they get healthy enough and in a good enough place. We're like, yeah, I want to go be with I want to help the young people. I want to help the young brothers get out the streets and boom. And my inclination is always, word, if you're sincere about that and you've learned enough from your own path that there may be there's always a space that someone who has a closer experience to the circumstance that certain young people just going to resonate with differently. And I honor that. Also, I try to sort of know, although some young people in aggregate who maybe weren't directly impacted by decisions you made in the past may be totally cool with hearing, you know, you learning from the largesse of your experience. There may be some young people, especially if they know that there's some connection to harm they experience and you, like personally,
right?
Like you was the one that shot at their dad. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe their dad is sitting down for 30 years because of what happened with y'all. You know, they may not really forgive you. You need to be okay with that. Like there may be if you was moving a package on whatever street in whatever city, and you know it's 30 years, 20 years later, and you out of that world, and you left the lifestyle. But there might be, you know, somebody, auntie from that time, they might not be all gung-ho to forgive you. And you got to be all right with that. Like,
well, that's another part of this, Just that's another part of this that I don't think we talk about. Like what it means to say, I almost can accept your apology, but I'm not okay with it. Right? Like, okay, I accept that, you know, you said what you said, right? But I'm not okay. And then how do we deal with the fact that, like, I'm not okay with that? Mm-hmm. And like you said, to then be like, okay, and you have to be mature enough to understand that person doesn't have to be okay with everything. Yeah. And I think that's part of the larger growth and development space that this kind of verses gave access to. Mm-hmm. It didn't go totally there, right?
Yeah.
Like, but it gave some like space to have the conversation. But it's not like you said, like, okay, I hear you apologized, but like I'm not okay with what the negative impact of what you did had on my family.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe that young person is not at the place where they need to be yet. But guess what? That's what that is. Right. Like it's not for you to have them be there, which is kind of where I was going with the whole like Jeezy thing, where like, why can't Jeezy get over it? Because he dealt with the trauma of being in his house high as giraffe ass and 4 people coming in his house to harm him. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how that man rests. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So as much as I try to make sure that it's you know, we put the mind first and all those kind of things, I don't know how that man wakes up. Yeah, I don't know how he came to grips with that. I'm sure he went to therapy on some level, but you know what I mean? And that doesn't mean that just because he went to therapy that he's okay with the person that wanted to harm him.
Yeah, like it's always, and I think that we would benefit from the idea that there's gradations, you know, of what is reasonable to expect someone to just be okay with, in terms, especially that it's directly impacted them in terms of harm and hardship and what they've experienced. That they, in aggregate, if you've had painful, negative experiences in schools, you might be able, you can find a way to be okay with the school and the school institution and the principals or whatever, for your kids, so that your kids hopefully won't, because I want my kids to have the same negative feeling that I had. But if you happen to go to a school and you were like, oh man, my kids, they're going to this new school, and then the teacher who terrorized you when you was in fourth grade is now the principal of the school your kid's about to go, you might snap out a little bit. You might not trust them. You might be like, nah, man, later for that. My kids ain't going near that school. They ain't never going near them. You know what I'm saying? The teacher said horrible things to me when I was a 12-year-old or 5-10-year-old
that's
child,
real, man.
and I ain't never letting it go. It is not for me to tell you that you need to, for some higher calling or whatever, let that go. I need to go, you know what? We got to find a workaround so that your babies can get what they need and you can get what you need, and this not be the way to get there. And I think, as a culture, as a society, the better we get at honoring those sorts of things, to say there's, for some certain situations, it's like, hey man, nah, that's just a no-go. That's not going to fly. And we find a way to get people what they need, through some other channel. You know what I mean? And then, my wish, will, for those brothers is that, and those maybe there probably know, not probably, there are folks in that city and in that community that know the inner workings or whatever, even took to get them on the stage together. Because I don't know if that was a challenge.
Well, no. So just for context for that, I know. But so the only way they really could do it was getting P from Quality Control Music. So P, who is like the Atlanta muscle behind Migos, Lil Baby, Lil Yachty, and everybody else, City Girls, everybody, everybody. QC runs the world right now. But P is like this Coach K and P. Coach K used to, interestingly enough, manage Jeezy. Coach K and P came together to run Quality Control. They're extremely close to Gucci, which there's something there that, the hood, sometimes you got to have some other conversations.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we have to have the dialogue about people where everybody is like, oh no, man, that's a really solid guy, man. And they'd be like, tell me about them guys you started with. And tell me about them guys you ended up with.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when none of the people you started with you ended up with says a little more about you than we would like to imagine. But yeah, and so they tried, and then the only person that could get Gucci to do it was P from Quality Control. Because he was the only one that had the credibility from a street level, right? To actually say to Gucci, this is for something bigger than you individually. You know what I'm saying? So again, it goes to quality of relationship, right? They tried this. Jeezy tried this for years. Jeezy kept trying to say, will you do the verses? And every time Gucci was like, I respectfully decline. And only when they got P in could this occur, which is something unique, I would say, still to our communities. That's important, that relationships still matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And that we have to remember, especially when those who are doing the good work and those who take time away from their families to help build other families, those who take time away from their families to help save other families, because they put time into the relationships to do things, that's important, right? And so, yeah, that's how that came to pass, that P was able to talk to Gucci and say, let's just go ahead and get it done. There's a bigger picture. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's peace.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
I mean, I think that's that's a hell of a place, right? Because at the end of the day, it goes back to many of the things that I would say even we talk about as good brothers, and that's connected to the broader vision of like Ask Your Oldhead, right? And just broader media and the things that we care for and stand for is how do you bring Black men together? How do Black men get healthy? Right? And what are the already existing infrastructure that we already have, right? Because sometimes we're like, we need everything. It's like, no, sometimes we don't need everything. We have a lot, right? We just have to put what we have in the proper perspective.
Yeah.
To be able to do what we need to do.
Yeah. Another thing I would add is that sometimes we have to whether we think it's appropriate or not, honor that sometimes somebody has a standing, they have the chips, so to speak, to get people to the table. I mean, it is what it is. Like if those two are needed to get this conversation to happen, to settle this issue, then this can't be a conversation about how you feel about those two. If we want to get this other situation to be resolved, like we going, come on, like everybody got to come in. Like, the grandma or the uncle, they be like, I don't care what you and the boys arguing about. Y'all all gonna come over here and talk about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, we just got to do. It might leave a little salt in your mouth. You know what I'm saying? Little taste you don't care for. But if these are the people that need to be in the room to settle something, then that just is what need to be. And we need to honor that people have relationships, and it's not always a symmetrical orientation. You know what I mean? Like certain people got juice with certain situations, and certain people don't got juice. And if you ain't got the juice, you get the man with the juice.
Go and deal with the situation.
Yeah. So, all right. I think we could call it a wrap.
My man, appreciate you as always.
Indeed. Peace.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to Good Brothers. Thank you to my good brother, I'm Majestic. Thank you to you for listening as we move forward towards a Thanksgiving weekend like no other. Please take the best part for yourself from our conversation and maybe emulate some of the ideas of forgiveness and thankfulness and finding respect and well-being amidst the tumultuous year that we're in. Musical considerations and props to my man, Black Man Green Pen, Knowledge Divine. Musical considerations to myself for one of these the musical outros that you hear on here, or intros, outros, what have you. The podcast is created and produced by me, Justice Rajee, with the help, obviously, of my brother, I'm Majestic. If you want to support the show, best way to do it is to 1, share, 2, find opportunity to find us on Patreon and become a part of the show. Join in, become a part of it. Also though, you can also give a review, send us a message on any of the social media platforms mentioned. All of these are options for you to enjoy and to share in my enjoyment, our enjoyment of the creative process, and I appreciate it. In any event, this has been, a very interesting month and an interesting year, but we are surviving and we will continue to survive. So, take the best part for yourself and be safe. Peace.